Welcome to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Dame, holistic nutrition coach and speaker. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. I'm so excited to be joined by a dear friend of ours here on the podcast, Amber Wentworth. How are you doing?
I am great. Thanks. How are you doing?
Good. Yes. Welcome to the podcast. It's so exciting to have you here. And I know we've been trying to coordinate this for a couple of weeks now, and we're doing it. It's happening. Yep. We're here. And I just can't wait to dive into your story. I mean, what you've been through and, the transformation and what you continue to go through, is really, really inspiring. And, I've been following you and connected with you for a couple of years now, it feels like, and I just love everything that you put out there and you share and the work that you do. And I knew I had to bring you on the podcast to highlight you and to have this conversation. So thank you so much for being here and for this great conversation that I know we're going to have.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yes. Well, let's dive into, I love to have guests share, for those who maybe don't already know Amber, where did your journey start, Amber? How, obviously we're going to talk about sugar and sugar addiction and all the pieces that you've been through, but, with your health and, where you are today, where has that journey, come from and how did you get to where you are today?
Okay. It's a long story, but I will try to make it as brief as I can. Okay. My story really for me starts when I was about 10 years old. And I had gone through some trauma in my life, like with my parents divorcing. That was a horrible thing. And I started like putting on a little bit of weight, not very much, not compared to what you see today, but compared to the little skinny girls back in the 70s, in the class. And I started to develop a little bit. And so therefore that meant I'm fat. And so that started my journey of hating my body and realizing that I was not normal. And so that stayed in my head for, many years. And as I progressed through, my teens, I tried every diet out there thinking that maybe if I just got skinny enough, maybe, I could lose weight. Maybe I could reduce these suckers, and look normal. And so, every diet out there. And in between all of that, I became bulimic, anorexic. I had exercise disorders. I abused diuretics and diet pills. And let me tell you, back in the 80s, there's some seriously good diet pills that are off the market now because so dangerous, but I did all of that. And, laxatives, I did all of that. And it was just this horrible thing. And by the time I was like 18, I weighed like 98 pounds. I mean, and people have a lot worse stories than that. And I'm only 5'2". So that's not like I was like, oh my good gosh, you're too thin or anything like that. But I did wear a size 00. And that was back in the 80s, which 00 now is way different than it was then. So I was pretty small. And I still thought I was fat. I had body dysmorphia. You have all those issues, right? Obviously there's issues. And I kept like going back to food for comfort, kept going back to food. And, and then I'd gain the weight. Then I'd get on another diet and I'd lose the weight. And I'd gain weight and I'd lose the weight. And I've lost 180 to 100 pounds 4 times in my life. And that doesn't even include all the, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds, which was nothing to me. And the thing about it is I never had a problem with willpower. I never had a problem taking care of the weight issue. But what the problem happened was soon as I met my goal, oh, good gosh, what now? What now? And I knew I was going to fail. I already knew I was going to fail because I did it every single time, no matter how bad I didn't want to do that. Because number one, I couldn't keep eating the crappy, boring, awful, horrible food and feeling that deprivation, that anger, that, why can't I eat what everybody else eats? Why can't I be that person? So there was a lot of anger. And I went through my 20s. I had my kids, and again, this up and down yo-yo stuff. And by the time I got to like my 40s, I was like really, really, really obese. Let me see, that's me. Yay. And so my highest weight that I recorded was like about 240 pounds. It was probably more than that because I didn't weigh, after you reach a certain point, you're like, I ain't stepping on the scales. And I stopped going to the doctor for that reason. But I started getting some really major health issues, like my heart would just beat out of my chest. And I felt like I was going to just die walking to the car or walking upstairs. Oh my God, kill me. I would try to change the kitty litter and it would take me an hour to recover from that. I mean, ridiculous. So I knew I had an issue, but I didn't, number one, want to face it. And number two, I didn't want to be told it's because I was fat. That's why I didn't go to the doctor. I hid it from my husband. I hid it from my family. I, acted like everything was fine other than the fact that overtly, I was obviously obese, but I just had all kinds of these different issues. And, but the worst part of it was the depression, the self-hatred, the relationship I had with my body. I felt like my body was this enemy, that it was not cooperating with me. So my brain and my body were at odds, and it was this horrible thing. It was like an alien. I hated it. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to that more than you would think, because it is a very real issue, this disconnect. And there was I actually told my family this one time, I don't know if it was Mother's Day or my birthday. I want to say it was Mother's Day. And they got me this really beautiful necklace. And I said, I don't deserve it. You don't put lipstick on a pig. I said that.
Wow.
That hurt them, and it hurts me now. So that was real. But after that, I had these health issues, right? And they were so bad. I went to the doctor for something completely unrelated. They hooked me up, they took my blood pressure, and they were like, oh my God. And then they open the door and they start calling for people, and they're wheeling in an EKG machine. They're hooking me up, and they're like, be calm, be calm. Yeah, right. Like I'm going to be calm, when these people are freaking out. So they lay me back on the table, and they were like, we're going to give you some blood pressure medication. And if you don't get it down within 15 minutes, we are taking you to the hospital. And of course, I freaked out because I went in for something so minor that had nothing to do with any of that. And so it scared the crap out of me. And after that, I was like, I'm done. That's it. I can't do it anymore. So bam, I got on the wagon again. I lost 100 pounds I think that at that time, it was like the second time or something. And, I felt good, and I thought I had it all down, and I did the Weight Watchers, and I did those, balanced diets and, all that stuff, and ate that food that I kept telling myself, oh, it was so healthy and it's so good and tasty, when I hated every minute of it. We would go out with our friends. I would watch them eating the chips and salsa. I'm a Tex-Mex girl. I'm from Texas. We live for that, and margaritas. And because I did have such willpower, I wouldn't touch it. But I would look at my other friends, even my friends who were overweight or obese, and I would feel this like, I can't believe these people are able to eat this, and I can't. I was jealous of them. Even though they were overweight, I was jealous of them that they allowed themselves to eat it. So I felt like a lot of deprivation. Anyway, so I did lose the weight, as I always do. And then shortly after, bam, again. And then I just got to a point where I didn't fully gain all the weight back. I never did, all the way up to that 240 or whatever. I never did that again. But I would catch myself, and I'd be like, okay, I gotta go. And so I would do it again. And I was having like a lot of issues in this one particular time when my daughter was getting married. And I very much wanted to be, the mother that looked good, that was proud to be in pictures and stuff like that. Cause I always hid from pictures and photos, that kind of thing. I would run from a camera. I was a camera ninja and a video ninja for sure. I didn't want that, on something more permanent. And so, I decided I was going to, get ready for the wedding, but I couldn't. My mental part was just not working, and I could never get myself to do it. I was too busy. I was too stressed. I just couldn't. Anyway, so the wedding came around and I wasn't real thrilled how I looked at all, even though I wasn't at my heaviest by any means. And I wasn't even what you would call obese or anything like that, but I wasn't where I wanted to be. And I was very upset, and I felt bad, with my daughter. So I did kind of do the photo hiding a little bit. But when it came to the family pictures and those kind of things, the obligatory things, of course I did it. And then that Christmas, my daughter gifted me with a family portrait, and I saw myself. Oh man. Instead of being happy for the gift she gave me, I cried because I was disgusted with how I looked. But I will tell you that picture is now hanging on my wall, and I'm proud of that. So I have overcome a lot, but at that point in time, I mean, just what kind of messed up thoughts do you have in your head, right? Well, anyway, so this all went on. And then I kind of got to the point where I wanted to give up. I was done. I wanted to give up. And I thought, obviously, because I had gained the weight back even more, and I just couldn't get myself back around. And my daughter, the one who got married, she was like, oh, I have this friend who is selling this powder stuff that you mix up. It's called ketones. And I'm going to try that. And it's like a sample pack. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it one last chance. And then I'm giving up. I'm done. I'm just done. I'm going to accept that I'm going to be fat, unhealthy. I'm going to die early like my grandmother. It's just going to happen. It's genetics, right? So I kind of had that mentality. I started taking the ketones and I was like, what in the world is this? Why do I feel so amazing? Why do I have this energy? Why am I not hungry? Why do I want to conquer the world? What is this stuff? Why did I not know about this when I've tried every diet? I've tried every potion. I've tried every shake. I've tried every medication. What in the world? And so I started doing research on it and came to find out about ketosis and that you can do that on your own. You don't need a product. And I was like, what? So I started the keto diet, and pretty much the rest is history. I did that for 2 years, lost the 80 pounds that I had gained from my heaviest or whatever it was, when I had lost it the time before, got down to, like 117. So I was pretty small and feeling really, really good. And then I had a friend talk me into carnivore. And so I started going carnivore and I realized how incredibly easy it was. And I had already weeded out the desserts and the fat bombs and the this and the that. So it was super easy to me. And I didn't have to dirty dishes and I didn't have to spend 3 hours in the kitchen trying to replicate dinners. Anyway, so that's why I stay carnivore. I've been that for 3 years. Well, here recently in this past about a year, I was at the Quit Sugar Summit. I was one of the presenters. And I came across Bitten Johnson. You know who she is, right? I'm sure you probably do, right? She developed the sugar tool. Well, we kind of had this connection. It was kind of weird. And so she contacted me and she was like, I feel something about you. I'm not sure what it is, but I would really like to do the sugar test on you. And I was like, well, okay, but I thought I was good and done. My cravings, everything that was done. I hadn't had an issue in 5 years, And so I did the sugar tool. And so many things fell into place when I was diagnosed as a pathological sugar addict in remission. Everything made sense from the age of 10 through the dumb stuff that I did, the eating disorders, the emotional stuff, the depression, all of this made sense. And I was just like blown away. And even though it was kind of devastating to be called an addict, and have an addictive brain, it was kind of freeing. It was like, I'm not a nutcase. There was a reason for this. I had an issue with my brain that is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a very positive thing, but because of what I was consuming, it became a bad thing. So it's kind of what, and here I am today because I don't want anybody to ever suffer like I had to suffer and to figure this out when you have the answers, so you want to share. So that's why I am in a long story, not so short.
Wow. No, but that's so important. Like this, obviously it's so hard to sum up everything that you've been through and, the decades that you've been here on the planet. Right. I mean, but wow, Amber, you've been through so much. And I think a lot of, those listening can relate to all, if not some of, this yo-yoing life, right? I mean, and this is the roller coaster that we're kind of put on, right? With the diet industry and the food industry, it's like, come along for the ride, right?
Yep.
Make the problem, sell you the solution. And, it's not our fault. It's not, it's definitely a journey that we've all been on in one way or another. So thank you for so openly sharing, what you've been through and the challenges that obviously, are so real and so challenging. So if anybody out there is listening and maybe you're at the beginning of Amber's story right now, just I hope that you're getting some insight and seeing, this inspiration, this beautiful woman here, anybody watching on YouTube, here in front of you who's found this peace with food. So absolutely incredible, Amber. And I'm curious, actually, I think this is a question I haven't asked anybody on the podcast before. So you're the expert to ask here, because you've both played around with the ketogenic diet and carnivore.
Mhm.
What's the difference for anybody who doesn't know, what's the difference? And, do you feel like, cause I know you mentioned, obviously in the dieting world and life, right, it can become this energy of deprivation. So how are you avoiding that, with clearly the restrictions that are on a carnivore diet, so yeah, what is the difference? And, how are you combating like that feeling of deprivation, and
Gotcha.
how have you worked through that?
Okay. Well, the difference between keto and carnivore is actually the far extreme of, like, say, a ketogenic diet. It's just your far extreme, but most carnivores are still in ketosis. So technically it's a ketogenic diet, right? The difference is, with a carnivore diet, you are meat-based. That means you don't eat plants, or you don't eat many plants. I mean, there's different spectrums of carnivore, and some in the community will argue with you, whether you include spices or coffee or dairy even. And now there's this big thing now about, honey and fruit. That's, part of a carnivore diet. And we all have our own opinions, and it's whatever works for you, whatever. But generally, a carnivore diet is absent of plants mostly. You might have a little bit, but pretty much you don't eat plants. And yes, that means you don't eat vegetables. Yes, that means don't eat fruits, but I have a couple of reasons why I don't eat fruit, and we can get into that later if we hit that subject. But or nuts, or any kind of that kind of thing. But they're both more, or they should be, I shouldn't say, a lot of ketogenic diets are very, they want to call it dirty keto. I call that crap keto, because it's not doing your body any good. Okay, yeah, you're in ketosis, yay, woohoo, good for you, but it's not doing you any good at a cellular level. And if that's what it takes you to get used to it and into it and get off the other stuff, I'm all for it. And that was me. But I now realize that, that's not really a good thing. It's definitely not a good thing to continue for most people. Well, any person, let's get real. It's not good to build your cells on crap. Processed food is processed food. And if you're eating the keto snacks and the keto this and that, no, you want to stick with the whole food diet. It's so important. Anyway, that was a tangent of mine, but I do. And I've gone through it. I know I've done it all. So I'm not, preaching or anything. I've been there. I did it. So I'm just as guilty. But now I understand how our bodies really function and how important it is to start from the ground up. And your food that you ingest is one of the first things that you got to get right, or nothing else in your body is going to work correctly. You're just going to be a big mess. There's a lot of other factors too, but that's a huge one. Anyway, but with a carnivore diet, you're eating primarily meat, and that can consist of beef, any ruminant, poultry, fish, seafood. Some include dairy. I didn't for the first 2 years, and then I added back in, and I need to take it back out because it is not doing my body any good. I'll just tell you that. And that's true for a lot of people. And some people will just bite your head off for that. But I'm sorry, it's true. It can be very inflammatory, specifically if you're talking about the dairy you just buy in a grocery store. Now, some people do pretty well with the raw dairy, and that's all fine. I have never actually done that, so I can't speak from experience. It's just, I'll be honest with you, just too much trouble. I know that sounds terrible, but I mean, raw dairy, I would absolutely, say, yes, go for that. Absolutely. Quality, when as much as you can. Absolutely. Even when it comes to, the grain fed versus grass fed, if you can afford it and you like it, yes, do it. Absolutely. You can get some benefit, but if you can't, that doesn't negate some of the good that's done. So it doesn't mean because you can't do it this way that you don't do it. Anyway, another tangent. Okay. So, all right. I think I hit the differences. I think so. Yeah. Because keto, I mean, you get to have plant foods. That's really kind of the difference. They should both be, honestly, whole food based. Let's get real.
Yes. I'm so glad, Amber, I'm so glad that you're calling that out. And that's like a welcome tangent here, because everybody needs that reminder.
Yeah.
Right? It drives me mad when you actually start looking at, and if anybody's doing this, right, the whole, like, the food manufacturers they know that whenever we're like onto them, they'll find a way, right? Whether it's all these sugar-free products, keto products, gluten-free, vegan this and that, right? Like any fad or quote unquote, like new awareness that we're having as just human beings, they will catch on to and find a loophole, right? Like,
and it's infuriating.
yes. Yeah. Like,
it's like keto on the front. You flip it over, sugar. What?
Yeah, what? Yeah.
What? Yeah. So it is infuriating. Yeah. It's terrible. Yeah. So eat whole foods. Yeah. Really, that's what you have to do. And whether you decide to cut out vegetables or not is up to you. And it depends on your body. Like what kind of inflammation do you have? What's bothering you? There are a lot of anti-nutrients, and some people are very sensitive to that, or at least until you heal your gut, maybe you can add some back in. I choose not to because of the fiber. The fiber kills me. And I suffered with constipation for over 40 freaking years of my life. No, thank you. I'm sorry, more like 50. I was about 3. I'll be 56 in July. So, that's a lot of years to suffer from constipation. And occasionally I'll add in something just to kind of see, I'm just curious. And then back to the constipation. So either my gut's not healed and I can't handle it, or fiber is just flat bad. I'm sorry. For some people, it's just not good. I don't eat a bad diet, so I don't need it. That's the way I feel, and I function really good without it. So we take that, whatever you want, but no, not everybody needs fiber. No, they really don't. They really don't. My gut's working really well, and I'm hardly ever sick. I don't have any issues like that. I don't have gut issues. I no longer have acid reflux. I no longer have any of that. So, take what you will. Okay. As far as deprivation, let me answer that before I forget. When I first started keto, like I said, just first starting out with ketones and having that feeling of satiation, that satiety, that feeling, that word that I didn't even really know what it meant until I experienced it, because I was always hungry. I was always, or should I say, I was never satisfied. It wasn't even necessarily, and part of that was a sugar addiction we can talk about later, but I just never felt like, even when I ate the foods I wanted, the chips and salsa and the, whatever else, the margaritas, whatever, I never felt like I did when I went keto. I had never experienced that. So for me, it was like a switch flipped. But I know now why, and why that was kind of, but obviously the ketones and being in ketosis, that is a huge thing. But there was more to it for me because I eliminated all my trigger foods that was causing my addiction. So, and the constant cravings and stuff. So, that's a different story. But yeah, I just didn't feel deprived anymore. I felt free for the first time in my life. I felt free. Food didn't control me. I could go out with the same friends that I used to go home and cry because I couldn't eat what they ate. And I look at it and I'm just like, if you only knew what that's doing to you. Of course, I don't say that to my friends, it's not my business, but I think about it and it's a choice for me now. It's not that I'm deprived. I'm choosing not to, because you know what? I value me now. I value me. I value my body. That stupid food that is going to damage me is just not worth it. It's just not worth it. Okay, I admit I do have alcohol, occasions. I will say that. And I know good and well it's not good for me. And I never tell other people that that's a good thing to do. I won't, just because I do it. No. But I do that. I admit it. That's my truth. But for the most part, I do not put stuff in my body that I know is going to hurt me anymore. I choose not to, not because I can't. I can do anything I want. I'm almost 56 years old. Nobody's going to tell me what I'm going to do. I'll promise you. They didn't for the last 2 years. They're not going to now. And so I will do what I choose to do. And I choose not to eat that crap. That's me. So it's not a deprivation anymore. I've changed my mindset. I've changed what I eat so I don't have those cravings. So it just kind of all works together. So as far as I'm concerned, no. And when you're eating nutrient dense food and you're eating enough of it, you don't feel deprived. And I know some people, they have the variety thing that they feel like they need variety, but even on a carnivore diet, there's a lot of variety. It's up to you. You don't have to be stuck in a rut. I choose to be stuck in a rut because that's what I like. I'm picky. I admit it. I'm a weird carnivore and I like filet and hamburger and occasional chicken, salmon. I do a little bit, but for the most part, I want filet and I want hamburger. That's all I want. But that's me. It's not because, oh, that's all I can have. No, I can have whatever I want. But, other carnivores, they want a constant variety, and that's okay. You can do that if it doesn't hurt you, and you don't have a histamine reaction. You can have pork, those kind of things. There's a lot of variety, and I think that is a real misconception. And just because you don't have a freaking rainbow on your plate, yawn. I'm so tired of that one. It's like, really, you just pretend like your meat's different colors. Have salmon and chicken and a red meat. There you go. There's your colors. But I have nothing against vegetables if you like them and you want them. I'm not one of those people. I'm not saying, oh, don't you ever eat a vegetable? No, if you want to eat them, fine. I choose not to. But and if you want, the color on your plate, that's fine. Eat a piece of meat. Eat your asparagus, whatever. That's fine. That's variety. You don't have to feel deprived. And I'm sorry, but if you think deprivation is not being able to eat cupcakes and donuts, you probably need to look at that. Dig a little bit deeper for that. And that's what I had to do. And now it's so clear to me that I had a problem. I mean, when you say stuff like, I can't live without blank, yeah, you might want to examine that a little bit more. Yeah.
That's so powerful, Amber. That's so powerful. I love that you just said that, because it's even making me think, I'm like, where am I still saying that in my life? Right. And it's so true, right? That's the definition of codependency, right? Like, I can't live without this person, or I can't live without this food, right? It's like, okay, there's some sort of control, attachment here that's not healthy. Right. And really disempowering ourselves. Right. I love, thank you for everything you just said, because that's so beautiful to really honor, what is our definition of deprivation, right? Is it, depriving ourselves of, on the other end, right, where we're eating junk, are you depriving yourself of energy and happiness? And we're depriving on, you can see it both ways. And I love that you really tapped into this mindset piece. This is really what we talk a lot about here on the podcast, right?
It's important.
How much we can change, that this is a choice. And I love that you just said that. I think that's really important for everybody listening. This is a choice to be off sugar in whatever way that looks like.
Deprivation is, like you said, there's, to me, deprivation is not wanting to leave the house because you're embarrassed of how you're looking, and what people may say to your family. Oh my God, that's your fat mother. That's deprivation. Deprivation is having acid reflux so bad that every time you lay down, you got acid in your mouth and you choke. Deprivation is, being embarrassed to go to the doctor because you don't want to step on the scale. That's deprivation. Deprivation is having to take medications that are bad for you, but you have no choice. I was on, blood pressure medication, 4 different ones at one time because of that incident I told you earlier. You know what medication I'm on right now? You want to know? Zero medications, 0. And I will not do it again unless it is absolutely life threatening. There are good uses for medications. I'm not bashing all, but other than that, no. I don't take aspirin. I don't take Tylenol. I don't take sinus medication anymore. I'm done. It has to be so severe for me to do that. It's just, no, I'm just not. I'm letting I'm giving my body what it needs, and I'm going to trust that it knows what it needs to do, do what I can. Now, I'm not saying I will never, ever, there's always circumstances. So you never say never, but in my mind, if I can avoid it at all costs, I will, because I'm not doing it. I'm not okay with that. And I think it's really sad that so many just accept it, and they think that that is their lot in life, that they just have to, oh, well, I'm diabetic, so I will always be on insulin. I will always have to take pills. Yes, a type 1, yes, but a type 2, no, there are options there. You can reverse it. You can, if the very least improve it. Even type 1, you can still improve. You can still cut back on insulin. It's a totally different animal, but there's still things you can do that help that. And so that to me is deprivation. That's deprivation. Foregoing a cupcake? Really? No, that's not deprivation. If you consider that deprivation, you do not know deprivation.
Yeah. And what an opportunity to really really notice. And anybody who's having this like epiphany right now, just big hugs to you. Like if you're noticing, wow, like I'm putting all of my happiness and mental well-being and being able to have a cupcake whenever I want, right? Or Oreo minis, apparently.
It's a prop. You know? It's a prop.
I have some props too. I've got some in my cupboard. You know, it's really a chance to call ourselves out lovingly on, wow, how much am I actually like putting giving my power away, essentially. Right. Yeah. And I see you here, Amber, like the way you're sharing, and anybody who's just listening to this and not watching on YouTube, like I can see the fire in you, Amber, like so in your power, and like, no, this is just not happening because I know what kind of life I deserve and how I want my body to function and, you know, how I want to feel right every day. And when you step into that, you know, and through the difficult part, right, of leaping off sugar or leaping into whatever you need to do, you know, I get that part can be scary, but it's so empowering. It's such a journey to really empowerment, right? That's what we're talking about here. And standing in this, like knowing and truth of what I will no longer stand for. And also where I will also like not stress about it or get dogmatic as well. And I love, thank you, Amber, for sharing. Like you still drink. I love wine.
I do. I admit it.
You know? Yeah. And there's no like doing that without guilt or shame. Like that's really the important part of this as well. Being like, okay, I know I'm doing what's good for my body, and I can still occasionally do things that aren't good. Right. Like, and my body will be strong enough to handle that. Like our body can
that's the
deal
difference
with this stuff, right?
That is the difference. If you clear your body of other inflammations, of other toxins, of that kind of crap, you might be able to, if you're not a sugar addict, you might be able to have that cupcake on your birthday. Okay, go for it.
And it's not going to kill you.
Right. Yeah. There's a big difference. Or, you know, for people, and again, we can get in this later, you know, fruit, like if you are eating it seasonally, if you're, you know, eating it on occasion, you're not a diabetic, you're not, you know, a sugar addict. Yeah, go for it. You know, yeah, you might get some good out of it. Go you, you know, but if you have so many toxins in your body and you're doing these other things and you're sedentary, blah, blah, and not sleeping and not getting sunlight and eating poorly, guess what? Your stress bucket is full. And so every little thing you dump in there is going to eventually come out and explode in many different ways, whether it's autoimmune issues or cancer. You know, there's just so much. But if you keep that inflammation down, you keep those stressors down in your body, then you can tolerate maybe some of the things that maybe aren't so great for you.
Yeah. And your body is strong enough to handle them at that point, right?
Yeah.
So we've been skirting around this the whole time. Obviously, I just love there's so many like rabbit holes that we can go down, Amber, but I want to bring us back to talk about actual sugar addiction.
Yes.
I know this is something that you're really passionate about.
Very.
And obviously we're talking about sugar in all facets and all areas, and there's no one way to see things. And I would love to hear from you, you know, your definition of sugar addiction, and is sugar addiction actually a real thing? You know, I love this one out there in the world. There's so many people like debating like sugar addiction doesn't exist or yes, it does. And there's just so much going on out there. So I'd love to hear your 2 bits on that.
Okay. First of all, addiction is a brain illness, and even, you know, ASAM has put that in their definition. The American Society of Addiction Medicine, I think is what it's called. And they put that in their definition. It's a brain illness. So somebody who already has an addictive brain, and yay, I have one, but it also kind of makes you a special person. So I go with that. I have this special brain. Ooh, it's special, you know, so you got to kind of think of it differently. You can't think of it as bad just because of this part. And there's so much food that is designed specifically to addict you. And if you are eating those addictive foods and you have this brain and you have some other little situations going on, it can manifest in a full out addiction. And the thing is, anything that gives you pleasure can be addictive. Yes, even sex, yes, even shopping, right? Those are all anything. So why can't food be addictive? And I hear this and oh my gosh, I actually talked to a dietitian at a eating disorder clinic that my client was in. And we went round and round, and she flat told me to my face, you cannot be addicted to something you have to have in order to live, like food. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting, because an alcoholic needs to drink, Do they need to drink alcohol? Yes, you need to eat, but do you need to eat processed foods that are causing you, not to mention the health issues, but to continue down this road, which can have many consequences later in life? Hello, I experienced it. And so many people have died because sugar addiction was the root of their issue. Maybe not technically from that, but because of consequences from being a sugar addict, because it doesn't go away and it's a primary illness. And a lot of people who have other addictions started out with sugar. Eric Clapton, that's a big one, because when he was interviewed for 60 Minutes, this is, I can't remember what year it was, but it's been a while. And the reporter asked him, well, so it started with heroin. And he said, oh, no, no, no. It started with sugar. And it was kind of like the guy was blown away. So to say that sugar addiction doesn't exist, to me, is saying, okay, neither does, alcohol addiction, neither does sex addiction, neither does anything, because they're all doing the same thing to your brain. It's lighting up the brain in the same way. It's doing the same damage to your brain. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what the experts say. I experienced it. I am an addict. I'm just in remission at this point. But anytime, if I was to go off track enough, I would be right back to where I was. So by staying keto, by staying carnivore, by paying attention to what I'm doing, I don't have that issue. But you just don't know what that one more bite is going to do to you. Like you say, oh, but I can eat this, I can do this. Yeah, maybe you can, but that next bite may be the one that puts you back and relapses you. Just like an alcoholic, you cannot tell an alcoholic, oh, well, just reduce what you're, drinking. And every so often you can have a drink of booze. How does that work? How has that worked out for really any alcoholic? Maybe they can have a glass and they think, okay, it's okay. And then the next glass, that's going to be the one that puts them over. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's so interesting. I've never heard that comparison with like, well, you need to drink, right? But yeah, what are we choosing to, yes, we need to eat, but what are we choosing to actually put in? Right. And is it to a point where it's actually doing damage to I think that's the definition of addiction that I love, right? It's the point of like doing it to excess that it's actually damaging your life, but you continue doing it anyway, right? Whether it's your relationships or your health or like damaging, like actually not serving you, but you can't stop, right? Like you're doing it anyway. I know that all this food and all this sugar is not good for my health, but I can't stop, right? Like it's kind of that, like, I know that it's, causing me to have problems and ruining my life in some way or relationships, but I'm still going to keep doing it like that.
That is exactly the definition. Yes.
Yeah.
That's, if you do that, the consequences. You are eating something, and darn good and well, it's going to pack on pounds, which is going to cause issue. It's going to cause you to, be diabetic. It's going to cause you blah, blah, blah. And you continue to do it anyway, knowing that you're willing to even, your relationships, whatever, like you said. Yeah, that's a problem. That's a real problem. That is something that needs to be taken care of. And no, it's not so easy as just going on the keto diet. There's more to it than that. Once your brain is damaged from an addiction, and you already have that brain anyway, and then once it's damaged, it's damaged. It's done. It's damaged. It doesn't get repaired. However, you can rewire your brain. You can figure out ways of dealing with it, and you can live a normal life. It's not going to be what you may have thought you wanted it to be, where you're eating your cupcakes and stuff, but like an alcoholic, many of them function just perfectly fine, right? They've had to learn how to deal with it. They've had to have the support. They have to have, the different aspects of it. They have to have the education. They have to, change their behaviors. They can't go into bars and party with their friends. You can't really do that anymore. So there's certain things like that food is so much harder, because it's the hardest addiction to break, because you can't avoid it. I mean, even alcoholics can avoid bars. They can avoid certain friends. They can avoid certain situations. Food is in our face 24/7. People who have had multiple addictions will tell you hands down, sugar addiction, food addiction is the hardest one to break.
I have many friends who have said the same thing. Like I have friends who've been through like really serious hardcore addictions, and they're like, nope, sugar and caffeine. Sugar and caffeine are the last
caffeine.
ones, right?
Yeah. And a lot of times sugar morphs into caffeine, then into alcohol. It kind of does this little smoking is in there too. So it can, so if you had any of these little triggers, like if you kind of question, maybe I drink too much alcohol, think about that. Think about that. And think about when you were younger. Think about maybe when you had a little bit of taste of that sugar. Like, have you ever seen the videos of little kids where they get the first taste of ice cream and they're like, whoa, and you think it's the cutest thing ever? I did that with my kids too. And now I'm like horrified because that's where it starts, right there. And the early exposure is one of the factors for becoming an addict. Is early exposure, whether, food or alcohol or whatever, the early exposure, it makes a difference. Throw in a little traumatic event somewhere in there. Oh yeah, that's a recipe for, eventual addiction.
Yeah. So how would somebody know in your opinion, how would somebody know if they're a sugar or food addict?
Well, if they think about food 24/7, they go to a party, they don't care about the people, they want to know about the food. Like what we've already talked about, if you continue to do something that is harming you and you ignore the consequences because you don't want to give it up, that's a problem. That's with anything, food, alcohol, whatever. If you can't live without it, that's a problem. If you watch the Food Network all the time and I'm not saying just watching that makes you one, no, but you add that in with these other things and you're constantly looking at recipes and you want to go to the dessert menu first and look at the dessert on the back, these little telltale signs, and it's all added together. But the biggest one is knowing the consequences. And sometimes you neglect the duties, your typical stuff because you're too concerned about eating or whatever, and you hide food. You feel guilty after eating the food. And I can tell you, I did that. Like, I hid food. And when like my husband and kids were gone or whatever, I would go dig out my food and I would have my little, snack. And then if I heard them coming, oh my God, and I hide it. Yeah. That's a huge sign, because if you're eating something that is healthy and that is okay for your body, why are you hiding it? Why are you hiding it? If you're not ashamed of it, if you don't have issues with it, you wouldn't be hiding it. That is a huge, huge sign. And if you just admit it to yourself, but the just constant, everything revolving around food, you eat breakfast, then you're already thinking about lunch, and then lunch, you're thinking of dinner. Dinner, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to wake up and eat my breakfast. Those are some pretty, big ones there.
Yeah. And I'm willing to guess, like, anybody listening is like, oh yeah, some of those definitely apply to me. I know that was definitely a lot of those applied to me. And it's really, really eye-opening when we can start to get honest with ourselves in that way. Like,
oh yeah.
And that was my, like, what I learned growing up. My mom was a big hider. She always had candy like hidden in drawers somewhere. And I would find it and be like, why is this hiding in here? Like, what's going on? Like the sneaking, right? And there's so much shame, not only with our bodies, that's a whole nother story, but with food and, taking a look at shame. That's an area that I'm really fascinated with. The podcast for another day, of course, that's a bigger conversation, but
I have a few others that I think I want to bring up because I think this is interesting. A lot of people don't see this. You can also have eating disorders. That could be a manifestation of trying to control your addiction. Now, that doesn't mean everybody who has an eating disorder is a food addict. No, it doesn't mean that, but that's a really good sign. And it sure did with me. I had quite a few of them. And, this all falls in place for me now. It's just a way of trying to control. So if you find yourself having these multiple, eating disorders and things like that, and then you have these other signs that I mentioned earlier, if you put them all together, I mean, just one of them or whatever, maybe not, maybe you're, just a casual user or whatever, harmful user where it's doing your body harm, but you're not actually brain addicted. There's a difference. And to know really for sure is the diagnostic tool sugar. Like I said, I always thought, okay, yeah, I'm a sugar addict, like kind of almost like a joke, thinking it's not really true. But after you do that test, there is no doubt. There is no doubt. And you actually see the pattern. You see when it started. Like for me, it was 10. That's where it started. That's where my addiction started. Now, that doesn't mean I wasn't exposed to it at a very young age, but at 10 is where you start seeing a lot of symptoms. And it was right after a traumatic event. It was, after being exposed early. It was, yeah. So the tool is really cool. That is the best way to know for sure. Not that you have to do that. I mean, if you answer some of these questions and you get really real with yourself, you know the answer. But I think for some people, they really need that in your face thing. And it can be almost like a death, if you want to say, because the reality is like, whoa, and you have to kind of come to terms with it. And first you're like, no, that's no. And then you get angry. Then, you go through the acceptance, and then it's freeing because you're like, ugh, my life makes sense now. Okay. Now, just like when somebody who has so many issues and they go to the doctor and the doctor keeps saying, your blood test looks okay, you're fine. It's probably in your head, right? And then you're like, no, there's something wrong with my body, I'm telling you. And then they go to another doctor, you get the same thing. Then finally they go to a doctor and they say, I know what you got. You've got this. You have a diagnosis. Now you can figure out the treatment. But until you get a diagnosis, until you know what you're dealing with, you can't have a treatment that is going to be okay. Just like if you are a true addict, the moderation BS ain't gonna work for you. Sorry, honey, ain't gonna work for you. It can't. Just like an alcoholic can't moderate alcohol. A food addict cannot moderate the foods they're triggered to. They can't. It's just not something, I mean, I shouldn't say can't, nobody ever. That's unicorn land where you're dancing with the fairies, okay? They do exist, but it's extremely rare. It's just, moderation is just not a thing with addicts. You just cannot moderate the drug you're addicted to. It's nonsense if you apply it to anything else. It's just kind of nonsense, So the treatment is extremely important. Like I mentioned, harmful using. If you're a harmful user, you can probably moderate, sure. It's still not doing your body any good. You're still doing harm to your body, on a cellular level, but it's not going to affect your brain like it would an addict. So it makes a difference. So you cannot treat a harmful user and an addict the same way. The treatment's different. So you have to know the diagnosis.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, Amber. And I would just want to ask for anybody listening, where can people find this tool?
You have to be licensed and certified in it. I happen to be one. You can go to my website and also on my Instagram, I have a book now button and you can kind of see what I have to offer. I offer just the diagnosis with the treatment plan. And then I offer a whole program too, that goes through the support, multiple interactions, resources, recovery tools, those kind of things. So depending on what, you need, if you just need the diagnosis, you think you can do it on your own, or you want to go to, Food Addicts Anonymous or something like that and use that as support, that's perfectly fine. But you just want that diagnosis, I do offer that. But you can find it on my website that I haven't quite published yet. I'm getting really close. I have another website, but it doesn't have all this on there. I'm kind of merging into, because sugar addiction is like my thing, and nutrition is really my thing, not just keto. It's all around. Of course, I'm going to focus on the low carb range, but because I just believe that's where humans should be, somewhere in the range. There's a lot of range in there, but anyway. So yes, I would be happy to do the sugar tool for anybody who is interested in finding that diagnosis. It's extremely eye-opening, and I'll tell you, I was flabbergasted. I really was. As much as I've gone through in my life, that really just pulled it all together. And I have so much more acceptance now, and I have so much more understanding for what I went through and why I went through it. And it's not my fault. It's not my fault. And that is one of the most freeing things ever. So you don't have to blame yourself. Oh, you just don't have willpower. You just, can't do it. You're just not wanting to. No, there's a reason for it. And, we could do a whole nother podcast on all that, but there's just so much to it. And the people who just say, oh, well, just quit drinking or just quit eating. Yeah, you've never had an addiction, apparently. Yeah. And lucky you, good for you. But that doesn't apply to those of us who do have an addictive brain.
Yeah, so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll make sure that all your links are below this episode. So if anyone wants to go and check that out and take advantage of this tool, and if you're resonating with what Amber's sharing, really, really definitely go check this out. So Amber, where where can everybody find you? I mean, I want to keep talking for hours, but
I
we're
know,
going to wrap
right?
things up. I want to be respectful of your time. We'll have you back on the podcast for sure. There's more to talk about. But where can
Always.
everybody find out more about you and what you're doing online?
Oh goodness. I have a YouTube channel called Lone Star Keto. Lots of different guests on there, and Bitten, my mentor for the sugar addiction, I have a really good podcast with her. So that's a really good one to watch. I'm on Instagram as, let's see, that one is Lone Star Keto Girl, all one word. And these different social platforms, I try to use one word, but then you can't, have, it's too long on one.
Yeah.
And then, it was just a mess. So I'm on Twitter, lone underscore keto underscore girl. I think, I don't even know anymore. It'll be below.
It's below in the show notes, everyone. Yeah.
It's some form of Lone Star Keto girl, Lone Star Keto, whatever. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. I'll make sure all those links are below so you can just click them or copy and paste and go and check out everything that Amber's sharing and doing online. I just love everything that you're putting out there in the world, Amber. And also love that, we can have these open conversations as well. With different, I love this in this podcast, right? Bringing different opinions and different viewpoints and different, there's not one way to navigate this sugar dependency, sugar addiction. And we're all different spectrum. And, what resonates with you is going to resonate different for me. And I think that's, that's really important here. And what we're trying to encompass is staying open-minded and also, calling yourself out when something is your truth, right? We all are going to have a different truth. And I'm so grateful for you sharing yours today, Amber. This has been really supportive. It's given me even some things to think about. I love learning from all the guests that I get to bring in, and hopefully everybody listening, you got a lot out of this as well. So reach out to Amber if you connect with anything that she shared, and go and take advantage of this tool and this quiz to get to know what's really going on for you more. And Amber, thank you so much for being here. This was so much fun.
You're so welcome. Yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me on, Danielle. It's been a blast.
Yes. Oh, incredible. Okay. Well, having you back soon. And everyone who's listening, thanks for being here. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. If you're loving what we talked about today, please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone you love. And if you're ready to dive deeper into discovering your root causes and patterns that are keeping you hooked on sugar, be sure to check out our brand new free workshop series that will help you kick emotional eating for good. Find the link to download this free series and other amazing resources in the show notes below.